All right, so get this. We're diving deep today into a system that claims to help you achieve more in 12 weeks than most people do in 12 months.
Whoa, that's a bold statement.
Right. We're going to be peeling out some key ideas from the 12-week year, a book by Brian P. Moran and Michael Lennington.
Okay.
And I have to say, I'm already kind of fascinated by their perspective on why the way we usually set goals just doesn't cut it.
Well, it's not that people aren't ambitious.
Right.
It's more that our brains are kind of wired to focus on what's urgent,
Oh, that makes sense.
more so than what's important.
Yeah.
So all those goals we set in January with good intentions,
Right.
they often end up taking a back seat.
You know, because in January,
Mm-hmm.
who really feels that pressure about something that's not due until December?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, I got plenty of time, and then
Mm.
boom, we're scrambling to finish everything.
It's that year-end crunch time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The authors call this annualized thinking.
Okay.
And their argument is that it sets us up for procrastination
Uh-huh.
and this false sense of security.
Interesting.
But what if we could bottle that energy we get at the end of the year?
Right, when we're like, oh my gosh, I got to get this done.
Exactly, and use it strategically.
Throughout the whole year.
That's where the 12-week year system comes in.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
It draws on a concept called periodization,
Periodization.
which comes from the world of elite athletic training.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So think about how athletes train.
Mm-hmm.
They have these focused cycles
Yeah,
where they build intensity and then they have periods of recovery.
got it.
The 12-week year takes that principle
Okay.
and applies it to achieving goals.
So breaking down the year into these shorter, more intense periods.
Exactly, into 4 12-week seasons.
Okay, so instead of just slogging through the whole year,
Mm-hmm.
we're hitting reassessing and giving our all to a shorter time frame.
Right.
I can see how that would make things feel more urgent.
Yeah.
But doesn't it also seem a little restrictive? Like we're putting ourselves in a pressure cooker.
You know, that's a valid point, and that's why the authors emphasize
Okay.
that you need to balance that urgency
Okay.
with an inspiring vision.
Ooh, I like that.
So a 12-week plan shouldn't be just a to-do list.
Yeah.
It should be driven by a vision you connect with.
Oh, emotionally connected to.
Emotionally, yes.
Okay.
Something that fuels your motivation.
Yeah, especially when things get tough.
Exactly. And they share this great story from Sal Durso.
Yeah.
He's a financial advisor who is going through a really rough time in his business.
Oh, no.
And he found inspiration in a pretty unexpected place.
Right, I wasn't.
On a trip to Alaska, he was struck by these fields of purple flowers called fireweed.
Fireweed.
Yeah, blooming across this landscape that had been ravaged by wildfire.
Wow, okay.
And the guide explained to him that fireweed is actually the first sign of regeneration,
Wow.
a symbol of resilience and renewal.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So Sal realized that his business needed a fireweed vision,
A fireweed vision. I love that.
something to inspire them to rebuild even stronger.
Oh, that's powerful.
So think about this for yourself.
Yeah.
What's your fireweed vision? What's that thing that will keep you going when you feel like everything's burned down?
Oh, that is such a good question. It's not just setting goals.
Right.
It's connecting to something deeper.
Exactly.
Something that gives them meaning. All right, so we've ditched annualized, thinking we have this inspiring vision guiding us what's next.
Well, here's where the authors really shake things up.
Ooh, okay.
They say throw out that traditional annual plan.
Oh, so no more of those massive year-long plans that just gather dust.
That's right. Embrace the power of 12-week planning instead.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
A 12-week plan naturally combats procrastination because it creates that built-in sense of urgency we talked about.
Right, we crave that.
But it also forces you to get specific and action-oriented.
Ooh, okay, so how?
It's not just about what you want to achieve. It's about mapping out the concrete steps you'll take each week.
To get there.
Exactly.
So it's like a roadmap, but way more detailed and focused than a typical yearly plan.
Precisely.
All right, I like it.
And the authors provide this framework to put that roadmap into action.
Okay.
It's called the weekly routine.
The weekly routine.
This is the engine that drives the whole 12-week system.
Okay.
And it boils down to 3 key steps.
All right, walk me through this weekly routine. What's step 1?
Step 1 is score your week.
Score your week.
It's about taking an honest look at how well you stuck to your plan the previous week.
Okay.
And they really emphasize measuring execution, not just results.
So it's not just about hitting a certain target.
Right.
It's about how well you follow through on what you said you'd do.
Exactly. It's about being brutally honest with yourself, even if it feels uncomfortable.
So like really hold ourselves accountable.
Yes, they even give you a scoring system to help you measure your progress.
Oh, that's interesting.
Takes the guesswork out of it.
Okay, I like it.
Yeah.
So you score your week and then what?
Step 2 is plan your week.
Plan your week.
This is where you map out your actions for the upcoming week.
Based on that 12-week plan.
Right. And remember, we're talking specific action.
Not just vague to-dos.
Exactly.
So you're taking that big picture 12-week plan and making it bite-sized.
Yes. So you can actually tackle it week by week.
I'm with you.
And finally, step 3 is where I think the magic really happens.
Okay, tell me.
The weekly accountability meeting, or WHAM for short.
Ooh, accountability. I was waiting for that. So this isn't about public shaming or anything, right?
Not at all. Okay, good.
It's about creating a system of support and encouragement.
Okay, I like that.
They recommend forming a small group,
Okay.
2 to 4 people,
All right.
and meeting weekly to discuss your progress, challenges, and successes.
So you have this built-in support system to keep you motivated and on track.
Exactly. And they even share a story about a woman named Leslie Liljenberg.
Okay.
She used WHAMs with her team
Yeah.
and saw this amazing boost in productivity.
Wow. So
Yeah.
having that peer support can actually make a real difference.
It really can. But I'm curious, how do we make sure those WHAMs are productive
Right.
and not just another meeting to add to our already busy schedules?
Well, that's where the author's emphasis on structure and process comes in.
Okay.
They recommend a standard agenda for those meetings,
That's good.
focusing on key questions like, what are your wins from last week? And what are your biggest obstacles?
Yeah.
That keeps the conversation focused and action-oriented.
I like that.
Yeah.
So we've got our weekly routine going, scoring, planning, meeting with our accountability buddies. But how do we really face the truth about our progress?
Yeah.
That's where measurement gets even more important, right?
You're absolutely right. Measurement is key.
Yeah.
The authors dedicate a whole chapter to confronting the truth through measurement.
Ooh, that sounds intense.
And they argue that most people avoid honest self-assessment.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like, it's the plague, but in the 12-week year system,
Yeah.
measurement is that reality check that keeps you grounded.
So it's about moving beyond those vanity metrics and looking at the data that tells us if we're actually on track.
Exactly. And they make this crucial distinction between lead indicators and lag indicators.
Oh, okay, what's the difference?
Lead indicators are the actions you take
Mhm.
that are directly tied to your goal.
Okay, so like the inputs.
Exactly. So for example,
Yeah.
let's say your goal is to write a book.
Okay.
A lead indicator might be how many words you write each day,
Okay,
or how many hours you spend writing each week.
got it.
Those are the actions you can control
Yeah,
that will eventually lead to the outcome of finishing the book.
makes sense. So lead indicators are actions inputs.
Right.
What about lag indicators?
Lag indicators are the results, the outputs.
Okay.
They're important to track, but not the main focus in the 12-week year system.
So in the book writing example, a lag indicator would be...
The number of pages or chapters you've completed.
Oh, okay. So it's shifting our focus from the end result
Yes.
to the actions that will get us there.
Exactly. It's subtle but important.
Yeah, for sure. So we've talked about the 12-week year philosophy, the weekly routine, the importance of measurement. But let's be real, change is hard.
It is.
What advice do the authors give for those of us who might feel overwhelmed by trying to implement all of this?
That's a perfect question, and it's a great lead-in to the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, good, because my head's already spinning with all this.
We've laid the foundation now. Let's talk about the nitty-gritty of actually putting the 12-week year into practice.
Right. I'm ready.
You know, it's funny, we often think about making these huge changes to see results,
Yeah.
but the 12-week year actually suggests something a bit different.
Oh, really? Tell me more. I'm curious.
It's all about incremental progress,
Yeah.
you know, making those small but consistent changes.
Okay.
And they break it down into these 5 disciplines of execution.
5 disciplines, okay.
Yeah, we've already touched on some of them.
Like vision, planning, even time use with the whole time blocking thing.
Exactly, but there's even more to uncover.
Okay, break it down for me. What are these 5 disciplines, and how do they all fit into the 12-week year?
Well, think of them as the pillars that support sustainable long-term change.
Okay, I like that.
So we start with vision,
Right.
that emotionally compelling picture of your future.
Yeah.
Then comes planning,
Okay.
breaking that vision down into those actionable 12-week plans.
So that's the foundation.
Yeah.
We've got our sights set on that vision. We've made our 12-week plan. What's next?
That's where process control comes in.
Process control.
It's the bridge between planning and actually taking action consistently.
So it's not just about willpower then.
No, definitely not, because willpower let's face it, it runs out.
Yeah, it's not exactly reliable.
Exactly. The authors say relying only on willpower is basically asking for burnout.
Makes sense.
Instead, they suggest setting up clear processes and routines.
Okay, so it makes it easier to stay on track even when you're not feeling super motivated.
Precisely.
What kind of processes are we talking about? Can you give me an example?
One of the key tools is the weekly plan.
Oh, right. We talk about the 12-week plans being action-oriented.
Yeah.
So the weekly plan takes those actions and breaks them down even further.
Exactly. It's about getting specific with your schedule.
Okay.
Blocking out time for those tasks that will move you toward your goals.
So you're taking that big picture 12-week plan and zooming in on the week ahead.
Right.
Making sure your daily actions match up with your bigger goals.
But precisely. And this is where it gets really fascinating.
Okay, I'm listening.
The authors actually highlight a study on patients with serious medical conditions.
Okay.
These were people who needed to make big lifestyle changes.
Like life or death kind of changes.
Yes, to survive.
Yeah.
They were trying to change their diet, exercise routines, all kinds of tough stuff.
Okay, this is getting interesting. What did the study find?
It found that the patients who were in support groups
Oh, wait.
were almost 7 times more likely to stick with those changes.
Whoa. 7 times more likely to survive just because they had a support group.
Exactly. It's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me rethink the whole going it alone thing. So are they saying we need a support group for every single goal?
Not necessarily, but they do highlight external accountability.
External accountability.
It's about having a structure for support and encouragement,
Okay.
which brings us back to those weekly accountability meetings, those WHAMs.
Right. Those small groups where you talk about your progress and challenges and wins.
Exactly. You're leveraging the power of community to stay motivated.
But what about those of us who don't have a group like that ready-made?
That's a good question, and a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah.
The authors have a few suggestions for creating that external accountability, even if you're on your own.
Okay, like what?
You could find an accountability partner.
Just one person?
Yeah, someone who's working towards their own goal and you check in with each other.
Oh, okay.
Or you could join an online community or forum that's related to your goal.
Okay.
The key is to make your progress visible to someone else, someone who will support you and hold you accountable. So even if it's not in person, you're tapping into that social support.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got our weekly plans, our support system in place. What about measuring all this? We talked about it earlier, but how do they suggest we actually track our progress?
That's where the weekly scorecard comes in.
The weekly scorecard.
Remember, we're measuring execution, not just the end result.
Right. It's about actually following through on what we said we'd do.
Exactly.
So how does this scorecard work? Is it some complicated system?
No, it's pretty simple, actually.
Very good.
They suggest scoring yourself on a percentage basis at the end of each week.
Oh, okay.
Like, did you complete 85% of what you planned? 95%.
I see.
The idea is to be objective and honest with yourself and use the scorecard as a tool for reflection and course correction.
So if you're not hitting your targets, you can adjust for the next week.
Exactly. The scorecard is for continuous improvement, not for beating yourself up.
I like that it takes the pressure off.
And they say even a score lower than 85% isn't a failure. It's just an opportunity to learn, adapt, and get back on track.
Love that reframing. So we've covered vision planning, process control, and measurement. What's the fifth and final discipline?
The fifth one is time use.
Time use, right? We talked about that with time blocking.
Yes, but they go beyond just scheduling.
Oh, okay.
They encourage us to be mindful of how we're spending our energy throughout the day.
So recognizing that we have different energy levels at different times.
Exactly. You have your peak productivity times.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then those times when you can barely function.
Definitely.
The authors suggest paying attention to those natural rhythms
Okay.
and scheduling your most demanding tasks for when you're feeling most alert.
Makes sense. And save the easier stuff, like email, for when your energy is lower.
Exactly. You're working with your natural rhythms instead of fighting against them.
That's a good point. But how do we balance that with the demands of a normal workday?
Right. Most of us can't just schedule things based on our energy levels. And the authors acknowledge that there are always going to be constraints on our time.
Yeah.
But they argue that even within those limits, we can make choices that support our energy and focus.
Walk what?
Maybe blocking out 30 minutes in the afternoon for a walk.
Okay.
Or scheduling your most important meetings for the morning when you're feeling fresh.
So being more strategic about it.
Exactly. Making small adjustments that can have a big impact on your productivity.
All right, so we've explored these 5 disciplines, but thinking about implementing all of this on top of everything else we're already doing can feel a bit overwhelming.
I hear you.
What advice do the authors give for those of us who might be struggling to get started?
Well, they have a whole section on those crucial first 12 weeks.
Okay.
And they really stress the importance of starting small.
Right.
They actually recommend focusing on just one major change at a time.
Instead of trying to do everything at once.
Exactly. Don't try to overhaul your whole life overnight.
Yeah, that makes sense. Small changes are more sustainable.
Right, and they highlight research from a study by Dalton and Spiller
Okay.
that found focusing on one change is more effective than trying to juggle multiple goals.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, it seems that when we try to do too much at once, we get overwhelmed,
Yeah.
we get discouraged, and we end up giving up.
Oh, so it's about picking one area, mastering it, and then moving on to the next.
Exactly like building a foundation one brick at a time.
I like that analogy. So which change should we focus on first? Where do we even begin?
They recommend starting with the area where you need the most improvement.
Oh, okay. So if you're always struggling with time management.
Yeah, maybe focus on those time blocking strategies we talked about.
Right.
Or if you're feeling scattered and unfocused,
Yeah.
maybe start with defining your vision and creating that 12-week plan.
So be honest with yourself about your biggest weaknesses and tackle those first.
Exactly.
Makes sense. But what about when we hit a roadblock or slip back into old habits? How do we stay motivated and avoid giving up completely?
That's where that weekly routine is so powerful. Oh, right. Scoring planning, connecting with your support system.
It provides structure even when things get tough.
Like a built-in system for course correction.
Exactly. You catch yourself before you veer too far off course.
And the authors also say it's important to celebrate your successes no matter how small.
Yes, celebrating those wins helps build momentum and reinforce positive habits.
Oh, I'm so bad at that. I'm always thinking about what's next.
But taking the time to acknowledge how far you've come can make a big difference.
I can see that. So we've talked about starting small, mastering the weekly routine, celebrating wins. Anything else we need to keep in mind for our first 12 weeks?
Well, the authors have a few more tips for those first few weeks.
Okay.
And they really stress being patient with yourself.
Okay.
Change takes time and effort,
Yeah,
and there will be setbacks.
for sure.
But the key is to see those setbacks as opportunities to learn, not as failures.
So shift our mindset from perfection to progress.
Exactly. And they also have some practical tips for dealing with self-doubt.
Oh, yeah. Everyone experiences that. They suggest making a list of reasons why you're committed to this change.
Oh, okay.
And look at it when your motivation dips.
Interesting.
They also recommend visualizing yourself successfully using the 12-week year system.
So imagine how good it will feel to achieve your goals.
Exactly. Tap into both the logic and the emotion.
I like that. And what about victim thinking? You know that thing where we blame everything else for our lack of progress?
Oh, yeah. I would have gotten so much more done, but...
Exactly. Fill in the blank with any excuse.
The authors remind us that ultimately we're in control of our thoughts and actions.
Right.
So instead of blaming and making excuses,
Yeah.
we can choose ownership and empowerment.
So we've got our first 12 weeks planned out. We've got strategies for dealing with setbacks, staying motivated. What about after that?
Yeah.
How do we keep the momentum going once the initial excitement fades?
That's where the cyclical nature of the 12-week year is so important.
Okay.
The authors want us to see each 12-week cycle as a fresh start, a
Right.
chance to reassess our goals, refine our plans, and keep getting better.
So it's not about being perfect in those first 12 weeks.
Right.
It's about building a foundation for ongoing growth.
You got it. And they stress the importance of celebrating your success at the end of each cycle.
Okay.
Take time to appreciate how far you've come and what you've learned.
So it's like a reward system built right in.
Exactly. It reinforces those positive habits
Yeah.
and sets you up for success in the next cycle.
It's a system for accountability and motivation, all in one time. I'm really starting to see how this all works, but I have to ask, is the 12-week year really for everyone? Are there certain types of people or goals it works better for?
That's a great question, and one I've thought about a lot myself.
Yeah.
While the authors say it's universally applicable, I think there are definitely some personality types and goal structures that might benefit from it more than others.
Okay, I'm interested. Tell me who you think this system would be a good fit for.
Well, people who thrive on structure and deadlines would probably love it.
Right. They need that clear framework.
Yeah, it provides that focus and consistent action, which can be really appealing.
Makes sense. What about the types of goals? Are there certain goals that lend themselves better to this system?
I think goals that are action-oriented and have a clear endpoint are a good fit.
Like launching a product, writing a book, training for a marathon.
Exactly. Things with a defined finish line that aligns with the 12-week cycle.
So goals where we can break down the process into clear steps and track our progress.
Precisely. And while you can adapt the 12-week year for more ongoing goals,
Right.
like improving relationships or learning a new skill,
Yeah.
I think it takes a bit more creativity to define success and measure progress.
That makes sense. I'm curious, have you ever tried the 12-week year system yourself?
I have.
Well,
I was a bit skeptical at first. I'm a
yeah.
creature of habit.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure I needed another system,
Yeah.
but I decided to give it a try, and I was actually pleasantly surprised.
Oh, wow. Tell me about your experience.
Well, I started by applying the principles to a specific project,
Yeah.
broke it down into 12-week cycles, and made detailed weekly plans. And what I found was that the system helped me stay focused and motivated.
Over a longer period of time.
Exactly. It was like I had this hidden reserve of energy and productivity that I didn't even know about.
So it wasn't just about getting more done. You actually felt more energized and engaged.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the 12-week year.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about external goals.
Right.
It's about cultivating that internal alignment and purpose.
Yeah.
It's about feeling like you're moving in the right direction, making progress on something that truly matters.
That's a really powerful testament to the system. It's not just a productivity hack. It's a way to live with more intention.
And you know what else struck me?
What's that?
The 12-week year isn't just for individuals.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
The authors talk about using it for teams and organizations, too.
So taking it beyond the individual level?
Exactly. They say that when everyone's on the same page,
Yeah.
working towards common goals in those 12-week cycles,
Mm-hmm.
it can create this culture of high performance and accountability.
So it's a collective shift towards greater effectiveness.
Precisely. And they give specific strategies for implementing it with a team.
Like what?
Things like how to run team WAMs
Okay.
and how to align individual plans with the overall organizational goals.
So creating that shared rhythm for progress.
Exactly.
I'm really feeling the pull of this 12-week year system now. It's so much more than just managing your time.
I agree.
It's a whole philosophy for living and working with more intention, focus, and purpose.
As we've been talking about this, what's really stood out to me is that it's not just about getting more done.
Yeah.
It's about getting the right things done.
That is a key distinction.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure we're focusing on the right things?
It comes back to that emotionally compelling vision.
Right.
If we know what we really want to achieve,
Yeah.
then the 12-week year gives us a way to align our actions with our values and goals.
It's about moving beyond just reacting to what's urgent and making deliberate choices about how we spend our time. Okay, before we move on to the practical stuff about actually using the 12-week year system, let's take a moment to gather our thoughts and see if we have any lingering questions. All right, we're back, and I don't know about you, but my head is still spinning a little bit from all this 12-week year stuff.
I hear ya. It's a lot to take in, but it's so much more than just a quick fix for productivity, isn't it?
It really is. It's a whole new way of thinking about how we achieve our goals, both in our personal lives and at work.
What I find really interesting is how it changes our relationship with time.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, instead of seeing time as something that's always running out.
Yeah, that feeling of not having enough time.
Exactly. The 12-week year encourages us to think of time as a tool we can use.
A tool to help us reach our goals.
Right. And that change in perspective can be so powerful.
I can see that it's like we're taking back control of our time instead of letting it control us.
Exactly. And by breaking the year down into these smaller 12-week chunks.
Yeah, those intense seasons.
It creates a sense of urgency and purpose that can really push us forward.
It's like we're hitting the reset button every 12 weeks, giving ourselves a fresh start to reassess, refine our plans, and really commit to the actions that will get us where we want to be.
And the built-in accountability is so important too.
Right, because it's not enough to just have a plan we have to actually follow through.
Exactly. And whether it's those weekly accountability meetings or working with an accountability partner or even just using that weekly scorecard,
Like to track our progress.
it keeps us on track and reminds us of our commitments.
It's like having a support system built right into the system.
And I love how they emphasize celebrating our wins along the way.
Well, me too. It's
Wow.
so easy to get caught up in chasing the next goal that we forget to acknowledge how far we've come.
I know what you mean. I struggle with that too, but taking the time to celebrate those wins, big or small, can really make a difference in staying motivated.
Absolutely. It's like giving ourselves a pat on the back and saying, hey, we're doing this. We're making progress.
And that kind of positive reinforcement can go a long way.
You know, one thing that's really stuck with me is how much they emphasize connecting with that emotionally compelling vision.
Oh, yeah, that's key.
It's not just about setting goals. It's about tapping into that deeper why that drives us, that passion that keeps us going even when things get hard.
Remember the story about Sal Durso and the fireweed?
Oh yeah, that was powerful.
It's about finding that thing that symbolizes resilience and renewal in our own lives. That thing that inspires us to keep growing even when we face setbacks.
I've been thinking about my own fireweed vision ever since we talked about it. And it's made me realize that the 12-week year isn't just about achieving goals. It's about living a more meaningful life.
I love that it's about aligning our actions with what truly matters to us and using our time and energy in a way that supports our well-being.
So I'm curious, what's one thing you're going to take away from this deep dive and actually try out in your own life?
You know what? I'm really intrigued by the idea of creating a model work week.
Oh, yeah, that was fascinating.
I want to try intentionally blocking out my time in a way that works with my energy levels and focus.
I think that could be a game changer for productivity and well-being.
I agree. It's all about being intentional.
For me, I'm going to focus on making those small, consistent commitments.
Like Mick White calling his mom every day.
Exactly. That story was so powerful, it reminded me that even small actions can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Sometimes those small acts of kindness and consistency can have a ripple effect we never imagined.
So before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. Imagine what you could achieve if you consistently applied these principles.
What goals could you reach? What kind of life could you create?
It's an invitation to break free from the limits of thinking, just year to year, and embrace the power of focused, intentional action.
To take ownership of your time and energy and use it to build the life you truly desire.
And remember, the power to create a more fulfilling and productive life is within your reach.
You just have to take that first step. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope you found it inspiring, and we can't wait to see what you achieve in your own 12-week journeys.